Hi everybody, it's Courtney, and today we are going to be making a card using some of the products from Scrappy Tails. I'm going to be using the Cardinal Blessings stamp set, the A7 decorative pop-up box die set, as well as a game changer for me, the A7 pop-up spring mechanism die. And so we'll show you how to put all of this together, and then we'll move on with the assembly of the card. So I went ahead and die cut all of the pieces I am going to be using. There is a ton of different ways that you can mix and match this to kind of decorate your box. But first, we're going to put the box together itself. You're going to want to cut out 2 of these large pieces, and I'm just kind of reinforcing the score lines that are already part of the die. 2 ways you can put this together. You can line them up on top of one another so that they're kind of just right on top of one another as far as the score lines go, but I prefer to line them up side by side. I'm going to be using some Tombow Mono Multi glue. You can use any strong adhesive here, including double-sided tape. I like to use the wet glue because it gives me a couple of seconds to shift things around. I line them up side by side, make sure they're perfectly aligned, and fold over that tab. Now, the wet glue that I'm using does dry fairly quickly. You just want to give it a couple of seconds to really adhere. Next, I can put adhesive on the second tab and kind of just fold that other piece over, and they fit perfectly together. Now, here's where you're going to want to stick your fingers through the little openings of the box to make sure that everything is really adhered together. And you'll see that it can bend now and easily fit into an envelope. Now, the 4 sides on the top part of the box, you can fold those over. You can leave one flat, which I should have done, but I'll fix that later. And you can see how it bends in order to fit in an envelope. So next we are going to move on to this spring mechanism, which is the game changer. So there's 2 pieces to this, one that folds 2 times long ways and one that folds once. So again, these already have the score lines, and right now I'm just reinforcing them. I used some heavyweight cardstock for this. So next, we are going to take the one that folds twice. You can see that we have that little triangle. You're going to want to fold that part last. So fold it up and then down. Leave that part on top, and you can see that this creates a little pocket here. We're going to fold that other piece and put that right inside that pocket so that we have these 2 little indentations on the top. Both of them need to be on the top. Then we'll take one of the rubber bands and kind of just fit those right into those little slits there. And this will be how the mechanism stays together. You don't need any adhesive for this part of it. But you can see that this creates a little spring. You can pull it and it kind of just springs right back in. Now, to put this on the card, you're going to want to flip your box upside down, fold over those little tabs on the top, and you're going to want to use really strong adhesive for this. I used 2. I used some score tape, and I used my Tombow Mono Multi glue because I really wanted this to stick. And you're going to put these right in the corners. So you're going to put it in diagonally, and it's going to go in whatever corner that you're going to want it to fold. It really doesn't matter. But as long as the other piece fits on the corner diagonal to it. So you're going to basically want your little tabs, the end of your tabs, to face in the same corner. So you're facing that upper left-hand corner, I guess you could say. So my glue took a little bit of time to dry, even though the score tape did stick. So, but you'll see that once you fold it to fit in an envelope, it kind of just springs right back open. So I'm going to put that aside to continue drying with that Tombow Mono Multi glue and adhere all of my little pieces together. Now I chose to, first we added our little tabs in the middle. So this is what your images are going to stick to. Again, I'm using Tombow Mono Multi glue. You can use score tape or whatever you have for this. I like to use the wet glue because I never put them in straight, and this gives me some time to kind of work it. And you can add as many of these as you want depending on how many images you plan on adding. I didn't fill this box as much as I probably could have, so only 2 of these were plenty for me. And I kind of just eyeball it and make sure that they're somewhat in the middle or spaced out. Now, I chose to use this particular background, and you can see that I cut my rectangles and squares from some craft cardstock and used the red cardstock for this little pattern. Just adding little dots of glue. I could have used double-sided adhesive before running this through my die cut machine. It probably would have been a little bit easier, but as you can see, after dropping one, I prefer just to make a mess. So I adhered these all together and gave them a couple of seconds to dry. Then I can place these on my box. Like I said before, there's a ton of different combinations. There's even a different pattern that you can choose. I just chose this pattern because I just think it fit well with the cardinals. I don't know why. There's really no rhyme or reason for it, but this is the one that I chose to use. So I'm placing the larger rectangles on the two sides that you're going to see when you're looking at the box, as well as the front. So underneath the little flaps that fold down. And again, using my Tombow Mono multi-glue and just sticking my fingers inside the box just to make sure that everything does adhere flat and somewhat straight to the best of my ability anyway. And then I can take these squares and adhere those to the flaps. And I only adhered the one on either side. I'm leaving the front one for my sentiment, and the back one will be for some of my images. So now that that's done, I can put that aside and we'll move on to creating the images for our pop-up box card. So like I said, I'm going to be using the Cardinal Blessings, which you can tell it is very well loved. I've made many, many, many cards with this stamp set. It is gorgeous. So I'm going to be stamping out a bunch of them onto some Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I am going to be doing some Copic coloring, but I'm not going to show you all of it because it did take me a while and it was pretty repetitive. So you don't need to see all of it, but I am stamping with Blackout ink by Ink on 3 because this is a Copic safe ink. And I'm stamping so many images here, and some of them are pretty good size. So I did end up stamping this twice. Now the cardinals, part of their little faces are black already. So I wanted to make sure that I got a really good impression to make sure that they actually were black. So once the stamping was done, we'll move on to the coloring. Like I said, I'm only going to show you one image. I'm going to show you this birdhouse here. We're going to start off with the birdhouse itself. I'm going to go right in with my darkest color, which is the E59. And as you can see, now that you get a closer look, these images are so detailed. But that's not a bad thing. Those of you who are fairly new to coloring, whether it be Copics or alcohol markers or colored pencils or whatever it is, these details within the image are going to help you. They show you exactly where to put the texture, exactly where to put the shading. So it's actually helpful to have these. Now, another reason why is if you're not a colorist, don't ever want to be a colorist, don't plan on being a colorist, and could care less how many color combinations you use, you don't need to. You could color these in solid, and with all of the details within the image itself, it's going to add that dimension and that detail for you. But you guys know me, I use all the colors. So I missed the beginning part explaining to you what I did, but you can kind of see exactly how I went along coloring that because I'm going to do the exact same thing to the top portion. So I'm going to use these kind of like these flick lines or texture lines that would be part of the wood to my advantage. And you'll notice that I am starting with my darkest color because I can maintain my flick lines better, meaning I don't over blend and I don't lose the texture. So I'm just following those lines that are part of the image and then just kind of paying attention to where my shadows would be. So underneath, I guess it would be the roof, right? Birdhouses have roofs. So I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow there, but I'm also seeing how I'm extending those flicks a little bit. They're all different lengths, but this is just going to add that texture within the wood. I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom portion where those flick lines are, as well as this little perch that this one bird is sitting on. But this perch would be out a little bit. So I'm not only adding texture to it, but I'm also going to add a shadow underneath it. So all I'm really doing is adding just a straight line underneath it. Now for the opening of the birdhouse, it would still be wood, it would still be the same colors, but it would be just a little bit darker. So I'm adding a little bit more of this darkest color, and you'll see as I work down to the lightest color, I'm not even going to use the lightest color in that little opening there. My lightest color will actually be my lightest mid-tone for the rest of it. So now moving on to the E57, you'll see that I'm just extending these areas out a little bit further. And you'll see that I'm moving a lot quicker because the darkest color actually takes the longest. You have to be the most careful. You have to make sure that you're just using the tip of your marker by leaving your marker straight up and down. And then as you move down, it becomes a little bit quicker. So it can be a little bit overwhelming when you're just adding your darkest color thinking this is going to take me 4 days to color. It's not. It moves quicker as you move down. Doing the same thing with the E55, just extending these areas out a little bit further. And like I said, the opening of the birdhouse is going to be the darkest. So this will actually be the lightest color that I use for that portion of the birdhouse. So I'll finish off with the E53, and I'm going to quickly go over the rest of the area with this color because I don't want to overblend. So the more you go over the darkest areas with your lightest color, the more you're going to move that darker color around. And I don't want to do that. I want to maintain the texture that I already have created. So by going over it quickly, I can still maintain that without overblending it. So once that's done, we're going to move on to the holly leaves. I'm going to use a 3 color blend for this. They are very tiny, but I know that some of the other images, the holly leaves are a little bit larger. So I wanted to kind of keep it consistent with the color combination that I'm using. Made this nice and simple, just added a little bit of shading to the base of the leaf as well as the tip of the leaf, and then blended that out each time to the lightest color. So, and finally, we are going to, well, first I colored this little pine cone. The pine cone is very, very, very detailed. And this is where I'm going to show you, I'm going to go in with one solid color. The E15, I'm going to color it flat. And you can kind of see that I have some detail still left, even though I only colored it with one color. So finally, we're going to move on to the cardinals themselves. I did take an EK Success journaling pen just to fill in that black area on their face because with Copic Safe inks, you don't necessarily get a really crisp look to it. So I wanted to deepen up that black. Now, my red combination that I'm using is not as dark as a cardinal really should be. So I'm going to add my deepest, darkest shadows with a W7. And that's mainly only going to be underneath their wing and where maybe their tail is kind of split a little bit. And then I can go in with my darkest red. I'm going to go right over that W7 that we already have down and just extend it out a little bit further. And that'll just make your red look even darker. It's going to look like you used a even scarier darker red, even though I didn't. I don't even have one. So that don't be afraid to bring in a dark, really, really dark gray to kind of deepen up really dark shadows for a darker image. But I'm mainly just going in with the flicks that are already part of the image, just like I did with the birdhouse itself. I'm using all of these details to my advantage, so I don't have to think about where my shadows should be. I don't have to think about where I should put more flicks and more texture. It's already there for me to kind of guide me along. So I did the same thing with this second cardinal here by starting off with that W7. Once again, I did start with my darkest color. Not only do I want to maintain that texture and maintain those details that are already part of the image, but also reds tend to bleed a lot. And in order to avoid that, you don't want to saturate your paper too much. And by not going in with the lightest color first, you're going to avoid that oversaturation. So just finishing up this last cardinal, and then like I said, I did color the rest of the images, and I used the same color combinations throughout all of the images. I used my Scan and Cut to cut these out. She does have coordinating dies, but I don't have them, so if you had the coordinating dies, they'd probably cut a little bit better than the Scan and Cut did, but it didn't do that bad of a job. So now we can assemble the box itself. And I'm going to do this a couple of different ways. And I know it's very hard to film a pop-up box card on camera because I'm looking at it a different way than you guys are looking at it. But because I folded down this back tab, and I didn't want it to be, I'm going to add the mailbox as well as a cardinal on top of the mailbox to kind of make sure that that stays up flat, because I've already bent it down and there's no changing that. But this will kind of give it a little bit more stability so that it doesn't bend when it pops up out of the envelope. I adhered the birdhouse in the front, and for the cardinals themselves, I cut out pieces of acetate. Now we can't see acetate, they're clear, so it's going to make it look as if they're kind of just on tree branches that are coming off from the side. So I adhered the acetate to the back of each one of these images, and then I can just cut that down as long or short as I want it to, and then adhere those to those little tabs that we had put in the center of the box. Again, using my Tombow Mono multi-glue, so I have a couple of seconds to move things around if I need to. So like I said, I didn't totally fill this box the way you probably could, but I was a little too nervous. I was a little too nervous that I was going to add too much and not be able to take it away, but you can see that it is definitely full enough. And you kind of can't see from above, but I'll tilt it aside to the side so that you can kind of see what the recipient would see once it pops up out of the envelope. Going to finish off with my sentiment by stamping out on this just the square of the craft cardstock and stick that down on that front tab or that front piece there that's folded down. And I have this leftover envelope that I colored, so I'm just going to adhere that down too. And that is it. That is the card for today. So you can see it folds nicely in an envelope, and as soon as that recipient takes it out of the envelope, it's going to pop right back in place. So as always, I will leave the supplies listed in the description box below. Thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great day. Bye.